They never thought they would wake up one morning with you filling their mind this completely. That is the first thing you need to understand. Most people are afraid to face what they have buried deep inside, and they spend a long time using all their strength to keep it hidden. At first, the feeling grew in a quiet way, so quiet that it almost looked harmless. But it was never truly silent. It was a real battle, and little by little they were losing it, even while their eyes were closed and everything on the outside still looked calm. You felt that shift too, didn't you? That small change, that strange current under their steady surface. It was never really about distance. It was never only about confusion. It was something deeper than that. It was about knowing deep down that something inside them had started to move and would not stay asleep forever. People rarely welcome strong feelings when they first appear. They resist them. They question them. They turn them over in their mind from every angle. They hide them behind excuses, behind pride, behind walls they have spent years building. What they feel for you does not fit the version of themselves they are used to protecting every day. And that is where the danger begins for them. The more a feeling shakes their control, the harder they try to push it down. But pushing something down does not erase it. It builds pressure, and pressure always looks for a way out. Stay with me, because this part matters more than it seems. What they tried to ignore yesterday has slowly become the very thing shaping their thoughts today, even when they do not want to admit it. That is why this morning did not feel like every other morning before it. Not because something new suddenly appeared, but because something inside them finally broke open. You were not there to see that quiet collapse, and maybe that is why it matters even more. It was not a dramatic confession. It was not a message. It was not some grand scene. It was the moment when every trick they used to run from their feelings stopped working. In that silence, the noise faded, the usual distractions lost their power, and you did not return as a simple memory. You returned as a truth they could no longer escape. Attraction can be brushed aside for a while. Curiosity can be ignored. But when a feeling carries real weight, the mind starts to crack under the pressure of avoiding it. They had to face the question they kept dodging for so long. Why do you affect them this much? They tried to answer with logic. They told themselves it was passing, small, temporary, something that would fade on its own if they just waited long enough. They reached for every excuse they could find: timing, circumstance, chemistry, chance, anything except the truth that scared them most. But people do not fight this hard against something meaningless. They do not keep trying to bury feelings that have no depth. They do not spend this much energy trying to explain away a person who means nothing. Every time they tried to push you out of their mind, your presence became stronger. Every distraction failed when they needed it most. That is not weakness. That is proof that something real has been growing under the surface, and this morning they finally felt how real it had become. They never wanted anything they could not control. They wanted command over their reactions, their choices, their emotions, their whole inner world. Then you came into their life and changed that balance without warning. You became the one thing they could not predict, the one feeling they could not solve, the one presence they could not remove, no matter how hard they tried. And that loss of certainty is what scared them more than anything else. It was never only about you. It was about what your presence woke up inside them. You did not just disturb their routine. You woke up something that had been asleep for years, and people rarely fear feeling itself. What they fear is losing control over who they think they are. That is why they pulled away. That is why their behavior turned uneven. That is why one day they felt close and the next day they seemed distant. Their energy became scattered, not because they cared too little, but because they cared more than they knew how to carry. Feeling this deeply demands a choice, and they were not ready to make one. Avoidance does not always mean the feeling is missing. Very often it means the feeling has become powerful enough to create real conflict. Their inner struggle took over quietly. Their conscious mind kept saying, "Stay safe, stay logical, stay behind the wall." But their deeper mind kept bringing you back in the silent moments, when the day slowed down and there was nowhere left to hide. And instead of fading, you became clearer, sharper, harder to ignore. Watch this closely, because this is where it changes. Once a feeling moves past doubt and settles into certainty deep inside, it stops asking for permission. It starts demanding attention. That turning point arrived for them this morning in a quiet but powerful way. No comfort, no warning, no easy exit. It came like a silent wave and left them exposed to something they had spent too long avoiding. Their walls did not fall because anyone attacked them from the outside. They fell under the weight of everything hidden within. And somehow that hit harder than any spoken confession ever could. Because the truth was not said out loud, it was simply understood. And once something is understood at that level, it becomes very hard to undo. A person can fool others. A person can even fool themselves for a while. But once the mind fully accepts a truth, it rarely lets it go without a fight. They know now. Not a little, not halfway, not in some vague and uncertain way. They know. But knowing does not bring peace right away. Sometimes it creates even more chaos, because now they have to face everything they were trying not to see. They have to ask what these feelings really mean, what might need to change, what the future could look like if they stop pretending. And maybe the hardest question of all is this one: what do they lose if they keep staying silent? Feelings like this do not sit still. They grow. They deepen. They keep moving. Right now, they are standing at the edge of all that built-up pressure, trying to hold on to control while everything under them keeps shifting. A part of them still wants to run back into old habits. A part of them still wants to believe ignoring it will make it disappear. But another part has already seen too much. Another part knows the truth too clearly. And that is exactly why they feel so tired. They are not fighting you anymore. They are fighting what they now understand. The mind wants safety. The heart wants honesty. And when those two pull in opposite directions, people start acting in ways even they do not fully understand. One day they seem cold. The next day they feel present again. One moment they tell themselves they are over it. The next moment they wake up thinking about you before the day even starts. That kind of inconsistency is not always a game. Sometimes it is the visible sign of a hidden war. A war between what they feel and what they think they should feel. Between what they want and what they think is safest. Between opening up and pulling back. Mornings have become the hardest part because the quiet leaves them with fewer places to run. When the world is still, distraction loses its power. Work fades, noise disappears. And what is left is the truth sitting underneath everything else. That truth keeps leading back to you. No matter how many reasons they make, no matter how many times they try to redirect their attention, no matter how firmly they tell themselves they have moved on, the feeling keeps coming back. Not because they want it to, because it never truly left. What shocks them most is not just how strong it feels, but how long it has lasted. They thought time would weaken it. They thought distance would dissolve it. They thought logic would finally win. None of that happened. Instead, the feeling changed shape and survived every attempt to erase it. It stayed there through every excuse, every delay, every act of denial, slowly and steadily, until one day they could no longer pretend it was not real. And once that moment comes, everything starts looking different. Keep listening, because this is the point most people miss. The problem is no longer whether the feeling exists. That part is over. The real problem now is deciding what to do with the truth. Now they are caught between the comfort of old defenses and the reality their heart keeps showing them. The pressure keeps rising, the awareness keeps growing, and beneath every attempt to stay in control is one simple truth they can no longer escape. Some feelings become too important to ignore. Some connections become too meaningful to dismiss. And some truths, once fully seen, keep echoing through every quiet morning long after denial has fallen apart. This was never only about you as a person in their life. It was also about the deeper parts of themselves that your presence brought to the surface. That process is still happening. It is not finished yet. They thought admitting the truth would calm everything down. They were wrong. Accepting it this morning did not end the storm. It only gave the storm a name. And once something meaningful has a name, it becomes much harder to avoid. Awareness does not always soften emotion. Sometimes it sharpens it. It turns something vague into something solid, something impossible to brush aside. From that moment on, every thought carries more weight. Every memory feels more alive. Every quiet second feels loaded with tension. When the mind can no longer deny what is real, it starts pulling in two different directions. One side moves toward you, the other tries to drag them back into safety. Neither side wants to lose. This is not simple confusion. It is a real inner split between desire and self-protection, both growing stronger at the same time. What they feel for you is no longer light or casual. It is turning into attachment. And attachment feels dangerous to someone who is afraid of losing control over their choices, their routines, and the independence they have guarded for so long. That is why, after finally seeing the truth, they did not move forward with ease. They stopped. They thought too much. They studied every small detail. They started overreading things that once felt simple, because now those things carry more meaning and more risk. Anything that matters deeply begins to feel dangerous. Dangerous to their peace, dangerous to the identity they built, dangerous to the image of themselves they have protected for years. People do not fear what has no value. That is the contradiction they can no longer ignore. The same feeling pulling them closer is also making them retreat. The same emotion giving them hope is also filling them with fear. And that contradiction creates a quiet tension that drains them from the inside. It follows them through ordinary moments that used to feel normal. A voice, a pause, a look, a silence. Any of it can suddenly bring you back into focus without warning. The deeper mind holds on tighter than the thinking mind realizes because it does not follow rules, plans, or logic. You have crossed an important line in their inner world. You are no longer just an outside person they can avoid. You are no longer a passing thought they can set aside. And now they have to face the question they spent so long avoiding. Why you? Why does your presence move them in this exact way? Why does it feel different from everyone else? The more they search for a clear, logical answer, the less logical it feels. This was never built on convenience. It was never only about circumstance. It cannot be wrapped up in one clean explanation. It comes from something deeper, something rooted in recognition, something that feels unplanned and impossible to escape. And if that connection is real, then it asks something from them. It asks for honesty. It asks for openness. It asks for vulnerability. That is exactly what they have spent years trying not to give. So they try to slow everything down. They create distance. They delay choices. They search for reasons to wait a little longer. They hope time will reduce what they feel. But distance does not always weaken a true emotional bond. Many times it makes it stronger. It clears away the noise. It removes distraction. It leaves only the truth. And when distraction disappears, the truth often grows louder. That is what is happening now. The truth is becoming harder for them to ignore. They feel it when thoughts of you return without warning. They feel it in sudden waves that hit them in the middle of the day. They feel it in the restless energy that refuses to settle no matter how much they try to stay calm. Suppression keeps failing, again and again. The tension grows because they are fully aware of what they feel while still trying to resist it. They see the truth, but keep questioning it. They know its power, but hesitate to carry its full weight. That creates an inner pressure that never fully leaves. It only builds, slowly, quietly, constantly. And what makes it harder is that they are not just fighting the feeling. They are also facing what the feeling says about them. Their emotions are showing them hidden wants, hidden fears, hidden needs. What they feel for you reveals a desire to connect deeply, to be understood in a real way, to be seen without needing to hide behind masks. At the same time, it reveals a fear of letting another person affect them this much. Because being affected means vulnerability. Vulnerability means trust, and trust means giving up some control. That is the part that makes them uncomfortable. That is why they keep moving forward and backward. Closer, then away. Hopeful, then doubtful. Open for a moment, then shut down again. This pattern is not random. It is a form of protection. It allows them to feel everything in small pieces without fully surrendering all at once. But there is a limit to how long that can last. No one can live halfway inside something this meaningful forever. You can postpone it, you can delay it, you can distract yourself from it, but sooner or later it asks to be faced, and every delay leaves a mark. Buried feelings do not disappear without changing form. They become tension, restlessness, mental noise that follows a person through the day. Recently, that noise has grown louder for them, more constant, harder to shut out. It is starting to affect more than emotion. It is touching their thoughts, their habits, their focus, even their body. Sometimes it shows up as poor concentration, sometimes as shifting moods, sometimes as strong reactions to small things that have nothing to do with the real issue. Underneath all of it, one simple truth is rising. Something unresolved is coming up from deep inside, and it is asking for something they are not fully ready to give. Not yet. Not without fear, not without resistance, but the pressure keeps building anyway. Every attempt to push it away only delays the moment they will have to face it. Every effort to suppress it creates more resistance. Every act of avoidance strengthens the tension below. And that is why they are closer to their breaking point than they realize. Not because they are weak, not because they are falling apart completely, but because holding back something this real takes enormous energy, and that energy is running low. If you have been noticing the cracks, trust that feeling. Something inside them really is starting to shift. The structure they built to contain these emotions is not as strong as it used to be. The walls are still there, yes, but they can feel the strain now. They can feel the pressure pushing from the inside. They can hear the quiet warning signs beneath the surface. A part of them knows they cannot carry this contradiction forever. A part of them knows a choice will have to come. A choice between resistance and honesty, between fear and openness, between protecting old defenses and accepting a truth that has already become impossible to ignore. That is what makes this moment so intense. Deep down, they know the situation is changing. The feelings are getting stronger. The awareness is getting clearer. And the room left for denial is getting smaller with every passing day. Something important is moving inside them right now, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. And that quiet movement may be more powerful than anything they show on the outside, because it is happening at the deepest level of thought, emotion, and understanding. What they once resisted is becoming harder to reject. What they once questioned is becoming harder to doubt. What they once tried to bury is slowly demanding its place in the light. Not out in public, where they still try to look calm through habit and effort, but deep inside, where truth exists without needing approval from anyone. Suppression always has a price, and now that price is coming due. The longer someone pushes down something real, the stronger it tends to return later. What once seemed manageable now feels intrusive. What once felt far away now feels immediate. What once could be questioned now feels undeniable in the center of their heart. When the deeper mind can no longer stay contained, it does not always return gently. It breaks through in sudden ways. It shows up in reactions they did not expect. It appears as irritation. It slips out when small problems create big frustration for no clear reason. Their focus disappears the moment thoughts of you enter their mind. You are no longer just another person somewhere in the outer world. You have become part of their private inner reality, and that changes everything. Outer situations can be avoided. People can create space. They can stay busy. They can replace one activity with another. But inner realities go everywhere with them. into silence, into solitude, into sleep, into the moments they thought belonged only to themselves. Their resistance is weakening because the main question has changed. It is no longer, do they feel something real? They already know the answer. The new question is what they will do about it. And that question scares them even more than the feeling itself, because action means exposure. It means vulnerability. It means letting another person see parts of them they usually keep hidden. Most people spend years trying to avoid exactly this kind of moment. You cannot fully control something that has already changed you from within, and in ways they may never say out loud, you have changed them, not on the surface, not for a short time, but deeply. That is why this morning mattered. It was not just another emotional moment. It was the moment they stopped being able to pretend they were untouched. And once that illusion falls, life does not go back to the way it was. It keeps moving forward, whether they feel ready or not. Now they are standing in that in-between space, where silence is no longer comfortable and truth is no longer avoidable. Part of them still wants to hold on to control. Part of them still wants to hide inside old patterns and familiar defenses. But another part is getting louder every day, and that part knows this has already gone too far to be dismissed. They can keep delaying. They can keep analyzing every sign. They can keep acting calm on the outside while everything shifts underneath. But they cannot unknow what they know now. They cannot go back to seeing you as something small, simple, or temporary. You have become tied to something larger inside them, something honest, something raw, something that reached places they thought were safely closed off. And that is why the tension remains. That is why the pull does not disappear. That is why every quiet morning keeps bringing them back to the same truth. Not because they are weak, not because they are confused beyond repair, but because some feelings grow too deep to stay buried. Some connections refuse to fade just because a person is afraid of them. And some truths keep rising until they are finally lived, not just understood. This is where they are now, caught between holding back and letting go, between protecting themselves and being real, between the safety of silence and the risk of honesty. And if you have felt that unseen shift lately, if you have sensed that something inside them is changing even without words, you are not imagining it. Something is changing. Quietly, deeply, steadily, and the more they try to deny it, the more clearly it returns, because what they feel is no longer passing through them like a brief emotion. It has become part of them. And that is the truth they woke up with this morning.